What's up guys, this is Chris here, and today we have a very controversial video for you. Today we're going to be talking about an opinion piece. I'm going to be going over 5 guns that I think are very overrated. This is my opinion, but my opinion is based in a lot of experience. And I've also shot most of the other semi-automatic pistols on the market to compare to these 5 guns to tell you whether I think they're overrated or not. Now, these aren't going to be the worst guns on the market, don't get me wrong, there's going to be a lot of good guns on this list, so don't hate me right away in the comment section. In order to be overrated, it has to be rated in the first place. So it has to be sort of good to begin with, and then it gets blown up into legend, and then that legend becomes unrealistic, and then it doesn't match the expectations. So I just wanted to say in advance that these are going to be 5 guns that are pretty okay, but they're not quite as good as their peer group, or they have been surpassed in some way by other models. So we're going to go over what they are, why they were famous, why they're good, and why they're overrated in the video. So if you like that, please go down and give me a like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate that. Hit the notification button as well. YouTube's not as big on fringe content as they used to be, so they're unsubscribing people, and they're not exactly giving people notifications, so it's important to hit that bell. I do want to mention my page supporters. Thank you guys very much. It's because of you guys we have all the guns on the table, and we really appreciate your support. We make reviews for you and not the industry. We don't care about pissing people off in the industry because I want to give you the best information possible. If you like that, just go down to the link in the description and sign up. Also in that description is a link to a local homeless shelter in Ames, Iowa. It's the YSS. Those kids could really use your help. In the description, I'll bring you right to the donate page. You go down there and you click that, donate to those kids. Now, let's get into it with number 5, the one gun I actually don't have on the table. And the reason I don't have it on the table is because it inspired this video and I sold it. That gun is going to be the FN 5.7 pistol. Now, at one point, I had 2 of these pistols before I figured out that other people make 5.7 pistols, I guess. I would say in this video, we're just going to basically be covering the Mark III because that is the newest and the most available version. That gun comes in at $1,500. It has a weight of 25.2 ounces, a 4.8-inch barrel, and it comes in 2 different colors, black and FDE. It was the first 5.7 handgun, however, it has evolved the least. Now, the FN 5.7 is popular because it's been used in a large amount of movies, and particularly video games, including Counter-Strike and Call of Duty. Because it's been used effectively in video games, it has more of a mythology around it than it would have previously. Now, the 5.7 round itself has a lot of myth around it. The round itself was developed for a PDW contract to give rear troops an ability to defend themselves from Russian paratroopers or any other nefarious character, and it was designed to be able to penetrate a certain level of body armor. I believe that's level 3A, but because of that, people have a misconception about the round's power. Now, that was in a PDW or a subgun, whereas now it's been used in a pistol. I think it's more effective as a pistol, and I think it's more effective as a civilian cartridge than a military one. If you look at its military history, it's not that great in all fairness, and the 5.7 has a lot of capacity. It's a very flat shooting round, but as far as the power goes, there's definitely a lot of myth about it. It is not as powerful as a 5.56. I don't know how many times I've heard that. It's not even half as powerful as a 5.56. It's not a joke. It's not even as powerful as a 9mm in most cases, depending on how you gauge power. This is not a knock on the 5.7, it's just a reality. Now, add that to the FN 5.7, which has the least feature set, the most expensive, and the least reliable of all the 5.7s we've tested here on the channel. I would argue that that gun is very overrated. The FN 5.7 is kind of like being catfished online. Great picture, looks very cool, but when you get it in your hands, it's a dude in a dress. You can get a Palmetto State Rock 5.7 that does more than the FN 5.7 for $400, and the 5.7 is $1,500. So I just can't justify that gun for any reason, and I think it's incredibly overrated. Now, if you want to get the 5.7 and you like that cartridge, there are many available, including the Smith, the Palmetto, and the Ruger. I would recommend over the FN. And if you want to see those comparisons, we literally just did a video on that 2 days ago, and that inspired it to be on this list. Now, in at number 4, we have another video game gun. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite guns, but reality is reality. Fucking Desert Eagle. Now, the Desert Eagle comes in a lot of different calibers and a lot of different looks. This one right here is the one I've kept out of all the ones I've had. The guns come in 50 AE, which is one of the largest semi-automatic calibers. It comes in 44 Magnum, 357, and several others. It's made famous because of a very large, imposing pistol that shoots a very large round by comparison to semi-automatic pistols. Not necessarily revolvers or subguns or rifles, but in semi-automatic pistols, 44 and 58 are very large. Now, the issue with the gun is, first off, the size and weight. Now, with the 357, you have the most capacity out of all the calibers, and you still only have 9 rounds. And the 50As have 7, I believe the 44s have 8, so you have a very low capacity in a very, very big gun. As you can see here, this is the small version. The 58 and the 44 are bigger than this one. Yeah, it does take optics, which is kind of cool, and it does have this really dumb safety, and it has a decent trigger, but the reality is not only is the size too big, but the reliability is almost non-existent in almost every one of these I've shot. Now, I've seen a lot of people in the comment section say they have a good one. I'm sure you do, I've just never seen it. All the people I've met in person that say they have a reliable one, when we went out and shot the thing, it had reliability issues. So I think a lot of times this is more of a case of they want the gun to work because it looks cool, and it's in movies like Snatch, Last Action Hero, all the way up to Deadpool. I mean, it's in every cool movie and video game you've ever seen. If you have a badass character, they look even more badass holding one of these. I remember I fell in love with this gun with Arnold's Last Action Hero in like the 1990s. I mean, this was really the darling of the 80s and 90s before they had peer groups that are better than it. And the reason why I say it's overrated is because there are guns nowadays like the FK Bruno PSD, which are cheaper, much more reliable, they hold a much bigger capacity, and they have cooler rounds, just as powerful as the 357 Magnum, which I have in here. As a matter of fact, it's more powerful, and you get like 15+1 in a very reliable, accurate platform with a cool mounting system and a very cool recoil mitigation system. And it just, that gun in and of itself makes the Desert Eagle look like a relic. On top of that, these guns are often carried by people who don't know how to shoot, simply because a lot of times there's a myth around power versus shot placement. Pistol rounds in and of themselves are very, very underpowered, especially compared to rifle rounds. You're not getting a temporal cavity with something like this, so just like any other handgun, you're basically poking holes. But I can't deny that the cool factor is absolutely there. Of course, I do own one, so. While it looks very cool in the movies, it's hard to argue that if I ever catch you carrying one of these, I'm going to assume you're compensating. In at number 3, we have the Russian Special Forces pistol. Touted as the fastest pistol on earth, this is the Arsenal Strike 1. Now, the Arsenal Strike 1 is an interesting gun, don't get me wrong. As I said before, it is a pistol that was used by the Russian Special Forces, and I believe still is today. 4.3-inch barrel, comes in around $850 MSRP, however, you can only find them for about $1,200. 26-ounce weight, and it has the patented Bergmann system. Also comes with 2 17-round magazines. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the Bergmann system, this is the Browning system right here. You can see the Browning tilted barrel system, one of the most popular and most trusted semi-automatic pistol systems. Now, there is some problems with that, but overall it is a very good system. The Bergmann system is a little bit different because it reduces the recoil a little bit and keeps the barrel in line when the gun is running, supposedly to allow the rounds to better feed into the barrel. However, we did not experience that in our testing. I waited for 5 years to get this gun. There was so much hype machine around this. All the gun magazines, all the competition shooters were talking about it, and then all of a sudden it dropped off a fucking cliff. And the reason for that is because the performance did not meet the hype. What was that? This thing is a dumpster.
What in the hell?
I don't know. It really is doing something weird now. I think part of that is due to the system that it uses, but I think a lot of it is just due to poor manufacturing in general and kind of a poor idea. So a lot of the hype was around the lowest bore axis in the industry. However, it actually doesn't have that. And it does have a very similar bore axis to a standard Glock. As you can see here, it's low, don't get me wrong, but that's not the only thing that makes a pistol recoil. And honestly, you can get just as high in a Glock as you can see right here. There's almost no distinguishable difference whatsoever. Part of that is the issue. Another part of the issue is they put a big fin on the back of this gun that's supposed to hit a tendon and clamp your hands on it. I've heard that before, but you can grip a gun without having a thing to force your tendon and smack you in the back of the hand all the time. All you do is squeeze your hand. It's not that big of a deal. You grip it the same way you grip any other handgun. Has kind of a poor trigger, has a really bad grip, and as I said before, it's very unreliable. I think one of the reasons it's so unreliable is going to be the unbelievably stiff spring on the recoil spring. I mean, I don't know if this thing took Viagra or what, but it should call a doctor because it's been more than 6 hours and this thing's stiff as fuck. Add to that, you're gonna have non-existent parts, customer service, interchangeability of any kind, and you have a gun that's basically sort of a unicorn that was never the Glock killer it was designed to be. They actually had a new generation of this pistol come out that is around half the cost of this gun, the Archon Type B, that if you're gonna get into one of these, I would definitely recommend that over this. Oh, we had a Glock failure.
Uh-oh.
Speaking of Glock, number 2, the Glock. I bet you didn't think I'd put it on this list, did you? Because you guys know I'm a Glock fanboy, but overrated is overrated. The Glock pistol is an amazing handgun in its own right, and it was probably the most influential pistol of its era. And if this was 1980s, 1990s, or maybe even the early 2000s, it certainly wouldn't be on this list. However, sadly for us and for Glock, it is not. Today is 2023, and the Glock is just not what it used to be, although it still has the reputation that it used to have. Now, the Glock is one of the most popular, if not the most popular pistol ever invented, and it certainly has produced the most clones out of any pistol in history. Now, I know you're saying that's the 1911, but sadly today, there are more Glock clones than there are even 1911 clones, if you consider that almost every polymer-framed striker-fired trigger pistol from any major manufacturer in some way or another is sort of a copy of the Glock feature set, look, feel, and overall usage, that there are so many Glock clones that you can't even shake a stick at them. A lot like the Desert Eagle, the Glock was originally made famous by movies and TV. The first time I ever saw this, I remember seeing it in Die Hard 2. The Glock is even so popular that most people these days that don't know a lot about handguns call all handguns Glocks. Now, they do have a very good track record. They are very reliable, don't get me wrong, but they aren't any more reliable than any of the modern polymer frame pistols that come out with better features, better triggers, and better prices. Now, I think a lot of the reason Glock is overrated is simply due to its previous success and then its failure to innovate over the last 2 decades, which allowed guns like the PDP, the VP9, the Canic, the M&P, and many others to not only compete but exceed the feature set for the same price point as the Glock, and also guns like the Echelon coming in recently, beating it in almost every category you can count for a semi-automatic pistol. The Glock itself has a grip angle that's different than most other pistols, so if you shoot anything but Glock, it's going to feel relatively foreign to you. On top of that, the trigger is very heavy and spongy. While reliable in most cases, certainly not very good for speed and accuracy, and the average person can achieve much better speed and accuracy in a pre-cocked striker design like a PDP or a Canic, or like I said, the new M&P. We also have an optics mounting system that's relatively questionable with a lot of failures in the optics plates themselves. And then obviously we're going to talk about the sights, which are essentially placeholders. Now, the Glock has such bad feature set that the most popular thing about them these days is going to be the aftermarket community, and it promotes putting a lot of parts in a gun that will make it less reliable. So people will put an enormous amount of money into a Glock to make it as good as a VP9 or the new M&P, and then they sacrifice reliability in trying to get a lighter striker spring to get a better trigger, and you end up ruining the very thing that Glock does well. Fucking trigger. Now, I think the biggest example of this is going to be in the micro double stack category, where every major company has one now except for Glock. And if you're going to compare the 26 or the Glock 19 or even the Glock 43X to its more modern counterparts like the M&P Shield Plus, the Canic MC9, or even the Sig P320, and you'll find that you're going to have a bigger, clunkier gun that is as reliable or even less in some cases. And then we'll talk about its lack of quality control over the last 2 years.
Except that
I'm not sure if it has something to do with the state of the country as a whole, but I've had 2 Glocks in a row now. Both had reliability issues out of the box. I got him though. Fucking failure again.
it was 0.5.
Got stuck on the ejector. Just stuck there. Have you ever seen anything like that in your life?
I mean, I don't think I have.
Glock perfection indeed, huh? Perfectly fucked.
Oh my
Ready?
God.
I'd never experienced that before, and I don't experience that with my Smiths, my Walthers, or my H&Ks. So even the one thing Glock is known for well has failed me lately, so I had to put it on this list. Glock can certainly turn things around. They have the name, they have a reputation, they've innovated once before, they can do it again, so I'd really hope that they do that in the future. Now at number 1, we have a gun that probably shouldn't surprise you, the Sig P320 or the M17 and M18 series. Now, the Sig P320, M18, M17 is very popular for a lot of reasons. First off, it was the first major gun to have the fire control unit in it. The serialized part in the 320 can actually be taken out and put in a bunch of different grips, so you essentially have 30 handguns in one if you just simply buy a bunch of grips and slides, and that's pretty awesome. The second thing is it was adopted by the US military, which is always a big selling point for any gun. I mean, look at the Beretta M9, the 1911, and so on, and because of that, other law enforcement agencies adopted it, and then a whole bunch of civilian concealed carriers bought it as well. It's funny because I did reviews of the 320 before they were adopted, and nobody cared, nobody watched them, nobody even knew what they were, and as soon as they were adopted by the US military, all of a sudden it's the best thing since sliced bread. But I'm here to tell you, sliced bread's pretty fucking good, and the 320 just isn't. The 320 isn't necessarily a bad gun, and many of them are very good, and it's certainly acceptable for concealed carry, law enforcement, and military use. I know that because they do. And the 320, though, compared to its peer group, just like the Glock 19, is lackluster in many cases. Let's talk about, first off, the drop safe issues. Now, the drop safe issues are a very controversial subject, and I'm not going to say they are correct or not. I've never done any testing myself. I have seen some convincing testing, and I have known people who have done some. However, I've also seen people who've refuted those claims. I'm not here to make judgments, but I am here to say there are so many semi-automatic pistols on the market that maybe picking one that doesn't have controversy around shooting you in the junk might be a good idea. And the second thing I want to say about that is it doesn't have a trigger safety, and a striker fired gun that doesn't have a trigger safety makes my junk nervous, and I carry appendix, so I don't carry a 320. That being said, there are some real provable issues with the 320, first being the bore axis. Now, it's kind of funny because we just had the Archon on here that's supposed to have one of the lowest, and then we have the Sig, so it would be a fun comparison to compare just how tall the 320 actually is, and you will see that it's taller than me, and it's certainly taller than it needs to be. And I think that's because it's based on a previous double action pistol, and they didn't want to change too much, I guess. I initially thought it was the fire control unit. However, guns like the IWI Masada and the Beretta APX both are cheaper than this gun and have better ergonomics, also have fire control units, and they don't have a bore axis like the 320. The second thing that hurts the 320 is going to be the chunky slide that they put atop Mount St. Sig, and as it reciprocates, it brings with it physics, and if you have a very heavy thing that's very high off your hand, it has a tendency to jump out of your hand more, which is why the strings of fire on 320s are never as fast as other guns on my channel. Now, that in of itself would not make it overrated. What makes it overrated is reliability. Because it was adopted by the US military, there's a mystique of reliability around the 320 that just isn't there. First off, it didn't do that well in the military testing, and that is public knowledge. You can go look at that if you like. And second, I've had like 7 or 8 of these now. I can't even remember, maybe 10 of them, maybe 12. And I don't remember having any of these that have ever not had reliability issues in some way. Even Wilson Combat couldn't make a good 320, and that's kind of sad. Malfunctioning, of course.
Uh-oh.
There's a failure to feed there. I really think that out of all the polymer frame striker fired pistols, it's probably the least reliable popular one. Now, there are many that are less popular that are not reliable, but if you compare this to an M&P or a Glock or a CZ-P10 or a PDP or a Steyr M9 or any major polymer frame pistol that you can get in a big box store, the 320 is going to be the least reliable in my personal experience. So because of its shootability, because of its reliability, and because of all the mystique around the 320, I would have to say it's probably the most overrated pistol. Does it make it a terrible gun? No. Could you defend yourself with it? Absolutely. Is it going to be better than a sharpened stick? For sure. But is it overrated? For sure. These are just my opinions based on my experience. There are so many overrated guns to choose from, and there's going to be so many people in the comment section that say each one of these guns is the best gun ever made. Your experience is going to be different than mine, and this is just, again, my opinion. That being said, I think it's correct. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. If I missed any, make sure to let me know that in the comment section below as well. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Peace out, your local homeless shelters, and remember to recycle. I'll check you later. It feels like it's going ka-chunk, stuck, boom, ka-chunk, cook, stuck. That's weird, man.
What was that?
Ka-chunk, stuck, funk, I guess. There's a fucking shirt for you.
Honest Outlaw's new rap song. All right.
If it weren't the sun, it'd be the wind, and if it weren't the wind, it would be this. Sight radius problems? What sight radius problems?